All right. Welcome everybody to April's Masterclass. Dan here. I'll be covering all kinds of good stuff today. And first off, thanks for everyone for joining. I strongly recommend taking notes. I'm going to shoot for a 20 to 25 minutes today. We'll be covering a range of topics, including summer program, kind of last minute picks here, obviously end of April. Some students, are still waiting for some results, like UC Santa Barbara's SRA. And some other students, didn't get into the optimal program that they wanted. So they're still wondering what's left. But we'll also be talking about academic mitigation, why that might actually be the priority over a summer program in certain instances. We'll be talking about SAT, kind of how to think about that, in comparison to time allocation for summer programs. And typically the unsung heroes of just academic preparation for the next year, rest, recharging. We've seen kind of a trend in burnout over the past, I would say, 3 or 4 summers. Students just aren't getting the rest that they need, and so they head into, some of the most critical school years, like grade 11, already kind of with zero in the gas tank. So it's pretty precarious. So yeah, all the wisdom that we've gained kind of over the past 14 years, it's kind of shown us that balance is indeed still reigns supreme. So without further ado, I'm going to go and share my screen and we'll dive into it. Feel free to post questions on the chat as usual, and we will hold some Q&A time at the end to answer any of the questions too. So let's get into it. So today I'm going to be doing a good amount of screen sharing. I'll probably be also opening up different tabs to share kind of how to navigate some of these resources because they can be somewhat cumbersome at times. We held a summer programs and planning part 1 in February, so this is kind of a follow-up to that. If you haven't seen that last one, and I assume it's still available, feel free to check it out on the playlist. I believe that's now posted on YouTube for those who have the link. So let's get into it. As a quick reminder, summer programs, specifically, so that's the first topic we'll cover. I won't, go too far into this again, but it's to develop the love of learning category, right? And it's primarily meant to serve one or two purposes, to deepen an existing interest or to explore a new one. So I just want to reiterate that oftentimes it's not always about, developing like, more academic ability. It's more so just like, okay, how do I build towards preparation for major, a likely major, or how do I, try something out that, I haven't tried yet before. And so we generally say I would say grades 8, 9, 10, it's a good time to prioritize summer programs towards exploration. Grades 10 and 11, you can start thinking more tactically about, deepening kind of an existing interest, right, towards, a likely declaration of major towards the college application, obviously, in 12th grade. So some first party programs to mention today that are still open, even though it's late in the game. ATDP actually still has classes that are open. And so I recommend taking a look there. It's not too hard to navigate. When you look at C courses and you click on all offerings, you can see what offerings they have on site, which ones are online. The application process is quite extensive, I will say. So if your student hasn't applied to ATTP yet, get ready to provide a transcript, a recommender, prior standardized test score that does not include the SAT, by the way. So it's quite a bit of. It takes about, I would say, like a week or two to apply to gather all the necessaries. But yeah, I think students technically still have about another week or two to apply for it. They are filling their seats until they can't fill them anymore. We call that a rolling basis admissions. So that's still there. UC Berkeley Pre-College and UCLA Skip are really summer sessions for college students that are now open to high schoolers. Both of these, provide high schoolers the opportunity to go on campus or online and take a class where they would earn college credit. What's interesting about that is these college classes actually, as long as they're taken after the ninth grade, meaning the summer after ninth grade, all the way through the summer after 11th grade, can also boost a student's UC GPA, right? So each semester grade that a student gets can count towards their UC GPA calculation. The key asterisk there, obviously, is that a student is capped at how many weightage points they can earn from overall from high school as well as college coursework. So Google search UC GPA calculation if you want to fully understand it, the cap. But UC Berkeley, summer sessions and UCLA summer sessions, they're both available through these two programs here. And I can kind of quickly demo how that works. And so just want to clarify, Joanna, can you still see my screen? Okay,
Yeah,
great.
that's good.
So if you search up UC Berkeley pre-college scholars, right, you'll end up here. And I just want to search this from a parent or student's point of view, right? What is this? Where do you go? How does it look, right? So if we're here, right, you'll see various different tracks. There's a virtual track, even a non-credit track if you want it. And ultimately, if you read through it, and watch the video, it's basically this, right? As you can see in small print here, right? UC Berkeley summer sessions. I actually think the easier way to go about this is just to go to their summer sessions page, right? So again, from here, I can click on summer sessions in the top right. I'll end up right here, right? And so this way you can look at the different session schedules, right? What's nice about summer sessions is, especially at Berkeley, is that a lot of folks have travel plans or they have other, existing commitments and camps at Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts and all kinds of things. Its summer session schedule kind of organization can be really flexible because it kind of shows you, okay, I can, potentially take session C if session A doesn't work, right? And so if I scroll down and click on Explore All Course Offerings on up here, and this is where things get really cumbersome. So if this is something that your student is interested in, the way to do this is immediately to select Summer Sessions on the term as a filter. We also want to scroll down and we want to find lower division. So course level, high schoolers are only permitted to take lower division courses underneath the number 100. Okay, so they cannot take upper division courses and they cannot take, certainly not take graduate level courses. So if you check off lower division, you'll end up here. And so when you look at a course code like, let's say Greek and Roman myths, AGRS N28, like that 28 signifies that this is a below 100 level course, and so on and so forth, right? This is 10B. So anyway, if I scroll back up, right, just like that, there are 326 courses that match these two criteria. Depending on what your student is interested in, this is where I recommend then just looking at the departments, right? So if I scroll over math and science, I'll see, molecular and cell biology. There's 3 offerings there. So if I click that, boom, just like that, MCB 32, Intro to Human Physio, MCB 32L, which is the lab, and MCB 55, Plagues and Pandemics, right? And so I can see, right, the different formats. Clearly, this is an online course, right? For 3 units, that starts and ends in this range. I can read about the course, right, and so on and so forth. If I want to know more, I can even click into it, the blue link, and it'll bring me to the respective pages with more description, things like that. So, just wanted to clarify how to use these filters on the left side, or else it just looks like a lot of text. And that might be overwhelming. And similarly, the way to find the UCLA courses is if you just type in UCLA, for high school students or pre-approved courses for high school students, you'll end up here. So you can search UCLA for something just like this. And again, same thing. A student can take 1 or 2 classes alongside UCLA students. And so I want to make a quick note here. Technically, this allows parents to pay towards a student's bachelor's degree already, right? So some, summer programs in high school, they don't provide any college credit, right? And that's okay because it demonstrates level of learning. the interesting thing about UCLA Skip or UC Berkeley Summer pre-college scholars is you actually get, right, like, college credit that goes in your bachelor's degree forever, right? And so naturally, there's also, I just want to give a warning, you don't want to take a class that you're not prepared for, right? And because if you get a letter, grade in that class, that'll be on your bachelor's, your transcript of your bachelor's degree forever, right? You can't scrub it. And so I just want to, clarify that. You could take classes pass, no pass. That is an option. So if the student wants to learn about something, but doesn't want the pressure of getting a grade in that class, they could take a class pass, no pass, right? But anyway, if you go down here, you'll see the drop down the list of courses, and there's a whole bunch of courses here. So, feel free to look at the different departments. If obviously, if you click into it, you'll be able to access more details about each of the courses themselves. And so these are some of our favorite picks for the remaining first party programs. They have kind of a UC GPA inflationary aspect, if you will. They look good because obviously it puts Berkeley or LA or both. I have a student who's actually going to be doing both ATDP and UCLA summer sessions, for instance. So you can stack them if you want to at times with other summer options. So it just overall has a nice little boost to an overall application, if you will. Yeah. Um, so those are some of the first parties that are still open and available. I'd say there's about 2 to 3 weeks now that students have to, still apply for those. Um, with I would say near 100% fill rate, meaning there should be a high chance of acceptance into these programs as long as your student isn't, an academic probation or failing their coursework in high school, I'd say. Some honorable mentions you can Google as well, right? If you're interested in biomedical, Rosetta is still there. UOP has a nice summer high school institute as well with a lot of interesting kind of pre-professional offerings in pharmacy and cancer research, things like that. Um, Engineering, for those interested in engineering, right? Hackathons, you can use Hack Club's website, so Hack Club, SF Bay Area Hackathons, and they give you a whole calendar of things to do. The Maker Nexus is in Sunnyvale, if you're nearby. Also provides some very cool hands-on courses in metalworking, woodworking, mechatronics, and the likes. Especially good for students who have no experience with, let's say, mechatronics or robotics, because maybe there just wasn't a spot in the team at their school. This location is not that far from where I worked at Google, the Mountain View headquarters in Google, if you're familiar, amphitheater. So it's not deep Sunnyvale. It's actually quite accessible for most people, even if you live on the East Bay. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about academic mitigation. What is this, right? What does this mean? Well, recently, the last like 2 months, I've been finding myself talking with students who are showing relatively lower grades in strategically important areas, right? So that would be the case of, let's say, a student who's interested in engineering who, has gotten double Bs or maybe a C in their recent math class, or a student who's interested in pre-med or biology who got a C in chemistry, right? It matters a lot, right? And like I say a lot, not all 3.5s are created equal, right? Where are those Bs coming in? How does that affect a reader's opinion about a student's preparation and readiness for a particular major? Very much can make the difference between accepted or rejected in today's day and age. And so I think there tends to be this obsession with summer programs and not enough consideration for academic mitigation. Um, and so, we want to try to mitigate any low grades that we see in our transcript. And if your students in grades, certainly if they're grade 10 or 11, this is really an excellent time to really kind of say, hey, I can find a data point that, can challenge a low grade that I got before, right? If I can create some, if you will, if I can create some lack of trust in the low grade, right? Because I have this other grade to show for it. I can explain that on my college application. That might get me out of trouble here and there. So, couple of mitigation sources to consider, right? If you're in that situation, if you got a low grade, first or second semester or both in a strategically valuable class related to your major, then, considering it's something like UC Scout, um, semester one or two, right? Considering things like community college courses, right, in the same level or above, as long as the student, obviously, and that's the key thing here, we don't want to, take a class where the student's going to not get a good grade. The whole concept of it is to get a higher grade than what they earned before. Um, you know, that's the idea. So anyway, UC Scout, I just wanted to clarify, is a very good source for mitigation. It doesn't cost much. A couple of hundred versus a couple of thousand, right? It's asynchronous and open book tests, right? So we see relatively easier experiences for students. And the fact that it's, again, fully asynchronous gives it a ton of flexibility for students who have other plans in the summer. Community college coursework is also good, and it's, I would say the one benefit that's not written here is that technically completion of a community college course means a completion of an entire year of a course in high school, whereas UC Scout only allows you to take one semester at a time. So some things to think about, right? And all of these, these mitigation sources, we like to think of using them in combination with each other. Usually it's not enough to just have one, right? Cover a C in pre-calculus. Usually I want to do, two if possible, right? You'll see where, by the way, even the SAT can be utilized as a mitigation source, though I think it's a lot less effective than one of these, right? And so I just want to clarify, this is very much a top priority, right, for students in these type of situations, where they got a grade of a BB or an AB, or they're on track to getting something like this, or worse, it could be a CC or a BC situation related to a major, a class related to a major. I would say this actually is more important than a summer program. Because why should we be building love of learning if there's already a lot of doubt that's being drawn into my academic ability, right? So understanding college admissions, they have to first establish that you're ready for their rigor, that you won't be drowning in academic probation while you're there, right? Before they truly consider your qualitative factors, right? Like love of learning, like demonstrated concern for others, like leadership. And so, recently I found myself advising students to not take the summer program, even though they got in, because maybe their second semester grades is they're slumping, right? So it's like, okay, we might want to hedge the situation, right, with some mitigation. And by the way, again, you could do a summer program and some mitigation. You just have to be careful though, because if a student is taking too many courses over the summer, again, that can harm their ability to do well in those courses in the first place, and or throw them out of balance for the summer, right? Maybe they're just taking too much. So with that said, I'll hop over to point three, an unsung kind of topic of summer planning uh, is just simply preparing for potentially difficult classes, and one of my favorites is a student who just finished honors chemistry in the 10th grade. They think just by nature that they're ready for AP chemistry. They think that, because they're the same subject, that somehow they're ready to go. They don't need to do too much, right? Big mistake. It turns out I would argue there's like it's like two or three levels above. And that's, unfortunately, the students don't tell students this, or the schools don't tell students this. And so the student goes in AP chemistry, and more often than not, they struggle. They got A's in honors chemistry, and now they're struggling in AP chemistry, right? So, preparing ahead of time, right, not only allows you a higher chance of just not struggling and getting an A in the class, but it actually frees up time for everything else that you actually need time for. Critical in times like first semester 10th grade and first semester 11th grade, right? So how, like, where do you go for this? I love Khan Academy and Purple Math for STEM, but is it the best tool to learn reading and writing? No. I'd argue not. I would utilize strategic one-on-one tutoring if your student is somewhat in need of developing their reading and writing skills. And what's really cool about this is there's a knock-on effect to the SAT RW section as well, right? Obviously, a lot of students who are very strong in STEM and math, they typically fall right a little bit lower on the reading and English section. So even though we might be investing in strategic one-on-one tutoring towards, let's say, AP English language, right, we're actually simultaneously helping them for the SAT, right? And I like to follow what I call the one half the class rule. If a student suspects that there's a hard teacher or there's a potentially hard class, or maybe the class is just so strategically important, maybe they're going pre-med and AP chemistry is strategically really important. In my opinion, a student should complete half that class over the summer. Like I'm talking about the first semester, if not more. And that's where Khan Academy is your friend because it's free and a student is able to kind of get that first initial exposure to a lot of the content um, you know, over the summer prior to that first semester. By the time they get into the school year, and that's how your brain works, it's seeing stuff for the second time, which is kind of like, oh, this is okay. Yeah, this is a lot easier. I remember this. I've already learned this before, right? So it takes less time. You're less stressed out. Your retention rates are a lot higher when it comes to content. And for classes like AP Chemistry and A Push, for instance, there's a lot of content. So it helps to see things for the second time as opposed to the first, right? Um, so, you know, fourth on the list. So far we've covered summer programs, academic mitigation, and academic prep. I would argue that those are the top three things I would consider. SAT preparation is, in my opinion, way overrated because the SAT is not required by many universities anymore. Yet, I find that a lot of parents invest a ton of money and time in their students to do this thing. And so the opportunity cost, which I'll mention in a second, is in my opinion, far too high, far too high. Um, and yeah, there is a potential to mitigate academics. For instance, if I got a C in pre-calculus, would it help if I had an 800 in the SAT math component? Maybe. Sure, why not? But is it more useful to do, let's say the same pre-calculus semester again at UC Scout for an A? Yeah, I would argue it is. So I do think that the SAT is, again, we live in 2026, right? The SAT was more valuable at a certain time, but that's not today, right? So be careful about over investing time and or money in this. We can make money back, I will say, but we can't make time back. So be very careful with your students' time. And this is the bottom line. I won't be too much around. I won't spend too much time here, right? It's just proven to be low ROI, right? The Department of Education back in the day, when it was around, showed an average point gain of 40 points, right, from these traditional style programs. Year after year, over a decade of working with students who took programs through Elite and Excel or whatever, have continuously told me it was a waste of time. Not only that, it was a bad experience, right? So I'm not saying that the programs don't work. It's just that the research shows it, and also from our own experience, our students' experience, it's shown that it's just not effective. And it's also very time consuming. Typically, when we commit to an SAT program, it means that a student can't do something else, right? That actually might help them much more and be more enjoyable, things like that. And so I just want to cover the last thing here, point five. I intentionally put it as point five because it is not required or preferred by college admissions at the undergraduate level. But it comes up a lot, right? Just like the SAT, we hear about talk of work experience, internships, research experience, kind of synonymous to internships. If a student is interested in getting work experience, I ask one question and then followed by that another. The first question is, okay, great. Have you so far developed the other parts of your profile? And if the student hasn't, then it's like, we should probably work on those things first. All right, it's like before I start working on shooting a three-pointer in basketball, I probably need to be making my layups and my free throws, right? Same exact situation. Now, if they've developed their profile, right, and for us on a profile score, I'd say 330 or higher on the profile score, usually, right, or a bare minimum 300, right? I'd argue if a student hasn't even met 300 yet, they have no business thinking about work experience, right? But if they've met, 330 or higher, I'd say, okay, And if this is something they're doing for their own sake, their own exploration of the world, their own enjoyment. I've even had students who just want to work at Cold Stone because they just want to know what it's like to work. Fine. But I just want to really warn everyone, this is not an expectation of teenagers by undergraduate college admissions. It is not, right? So don't buy the hype. Um, right. So I would say, couple final points of wisdom. Most common mistake I find nowadays is we think of we're overproductive. We think of our kids as kind of units of capital that have to be optimized, and as a result, right, they enroll into too much stuff, and then they just get burnt out. Right, they're already exhausted after a long school year. So imagine plunging them into more school, and then they come out of summer exhausted into another intense year, likely more intense than the last. We see this manifest in lower grades. Typically, unfortunately, we also see this manifest in like greater levels of anxiety and sometimes, unfortunately, even panic attacks. Because the students are so burnt out from just the grind, right, of too much class. So be very careful to kind of fall into this, right? Kind of, I guess they call this the classical rat race. What I recommend is more something that looks like this, right? Focusing on both resting and recharging. They are not the same thing. Laying down on your phone, scrolling on Instagram might be considered resting, but you're not recharging anything. I like to also think about it as like a phone. If you just set your phone down, not on the charger, it's resting. Screen's off. It's not charging. It's not losing battery, not that fast. It's just there. Put your phone on charge, now it's recharging. Well, turns out that's exactly what we need to think about summer, right? Summer is not this time to just constantly push our kids. We got to make sure that they're living in balance. And so, sure, let's maybe enroll them in a summer program or a UC Scout course, not three, not four, not five, not two, three dual enrollment classes over the summer. It's crazy. Right. But in addition to the intellectual stuff, okay, let's help our students, explore something new. It could be artistic, it could be intellectual, it could be athletic, it could be anything, just for fun, right? We call this try something. So learn something is the first point, try something is the second. And making time for friends and family. Recently I've had so many students and parents ask me, hey, we're thinking about a trip to India. We're thinking about a family trip to Banff in Canada, but we also want to prioritize their profile. And I'm like, guys, go. Right? We can figure out a program or something, even academic mitigation, we can figure it out to fit around that, right? Because if a student doesn't spend time with the people that they enjoy the most, right? It has huge implications. They're not recharging. They're typically just either resting or they're burning, right? And I want to make sure we mention this at the end. So often students don't have time to volunteer over the school year because they're busy with six classes and tests and finals and projects and all that stuff in clubs and robotics and track and field and basketball and volleyball. I typically find that the summer is a great time to just say, you know what, I'm going to learn about myself. I'm going to spend quality time with my friends and family, and I'm going to spend some time, just a little bit. It could just be 1 hour a week, you know, just learning about other people in my community, especially those in need. So volunteering is an excellent thing to do with, kind of any extra spare time the student has. And this is much more balanced. I'd argue much greater ROI strategically. And obviously, I think just at a glance, it looks like a very healthy lifestyle. That's exactly what it is. So a summer in summary, right, is really this. Summer is a time to rest and recharge. Use a summer program to deepen or explore, right, towards love of learning, and address any major related low grades with academic mitigation. I think if you just do those three things, right, I think your summer is very productive, but also it's very recharging. It's very fulfilling. Deprioritize work experience. SAT boot camps and enrichment tutoring. If you're already signed up for the boot camp, that's fine. That's okay. It is what it is. A lot of those programs don't offer refunds. I get it. But that's okay. Then okay, let's figure out a way then to balance out the rest of it, right, without burning our students out. And so, yeah, prioritize the things that give you energy back. Every student has their own thing, right? I like running and reading. Other students like doing other things. I will say this, if you're a student you're here, or if you're a parent here of a student who is addicted to gaming or endlessly doom scrolling, be careful, right? With that, that usually doesn't give you energy back. Again, resting versus recharging. It's a big difference there. And make time intentionally for friends. Make time intentionally for friends. If you don't make time for friends and family, you'll likely not have it, right? And that's usually a big problem that we're noticing with students. They're just doing class to class to class. They're back to back to back. They don't have enough time for themselves, let alone for the people that they love, right? Not a healthy look for the summer. If that's how students do in the summer, I can only imagine what it's like for during the school year for them. So pace yourself, find that balance, learn, try something, right? Spend quality time to just be. I think that's something that we can all follow a little bit more of. But yeah, with all that said, thanks for joining. I'm going to open up for questions.